All right, diving in. You guys sent some seriously interesting stuff our way, and it looks like we're tackling some big questions today.
It is fascinating, yeah. Getting into some pretty mind-bending ideas about the future of humanity, where we've been and where we're headed.
Okay, so we've got excerpts from this interview, and wow, it covers a lot, T. But this idea of the power of stories really jumped out at me.
The powerful concept, for sure. The idea that humans dominate the planet, not because we're physically stronger,
Yeah.
but because we can believe in things that don't actually exist.
So it's like our imagination is our superpower. That's kind of a wild thought.
Yeah, think about it. Money, religion, countries, these are all like collective fictions. We created them and decided to believe in them, and they only have power because we give it to them.
Okay, I see what you mean.
Hmm.
Like a dollar bill is just paper, right? But we all agree it has value, so we use it to buy stuff. It's a fiction that makes the whole economy work.
Exactly. And this ability to believe in stories, these narratives, it's been key to our success as a species. But the interview also says this makes us vulnerable to being manipulated.
Especially now with technology changing everything so fast.
Right. And that brings us to AI. The interview says AI is different from any other technology because it can create its own stories and make decisions on its own.
So it's not just about AI being smarter or faster. It's about it maybe changing like the very fabric of reality, the stories we tell ourselves about the world.
Yeah. Imagine AI creating financial systems so complex that even the smartest people don't get how they work. Or political strategies so subtle we don't even know we're being influenced.
It's like we're used to tech being a tool, something we control. But AI could become something way more powerful, something that shapes how we understand reality without us even realizing it.
And that leads to another idea from the interview, humans becoming hackable animals.
Okay, that one definitely got my attention. Hackable animals. What does that even mean?
It means algorithms are getting so good at predicting and messing with our behavior that we might be losing control of our own choices. Like, think about how dating apps use algorithms to match people, or how social media keeps you scrolling.
So it's not just our money or politics being controlled. It's like our desires, our beliefs, maybe even who we think we are.
Exactly. And the interview asks some tough questions. If an algorithm can predict what I'll do before I even know, do I really have free will? What happens to individual choice if our desires are shaped by things we can't control?
Yeah, that is a lot to think about. And it's not just some philosophy debate, right? This has real
Oh,
consequences.
absolutely. The interview argues that AI's influence could lead to, well, lots of problems, from bigger social divides to even undermining democracy itself.
Wait, undermining democracy. How?
Think about AI-powered propaganda manipulating voters, or campaigns targeting people so precisely that they exploit their fears in ways we've never seen. It could lead to chaos and instability.
That's a pretty dark picture. Is there any good news here?
Well, the interview doesn't give easy answers, but it does say we still have a choice. We can choose how we develop and use this technology, how we respond to these challenges.
So it's not game over. We still have some control.
Yeah, we're not just along for the ride. We can shape the future, make it reflect our values.
Okay, that's a little reassuring.
Mhm.
But honestly, this is a lot to process. Where do we even begin?
Well, the first step is understanding how these technologies work, how they're already affecting us, and what could happen.
Education, basically.
Exactly. And having open, honest conversations about the ethics of it all. We need to think critically about the future we want and work together so technology serves humanity, not the other way around.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Sounds like we've got a lot to talk about. So what should we dive into next?
Well, this is just the tip of the iceberg. The interview goes on to talk about all sorts of fascinating things: the search for happiness, the idea of immortality, even war making a comeback, and the importance of what they call a balanced information diet.
Okay, I am definitely intrigued. Let's break down each of these themes and see what we can uncover.
Sounds good. Let's see where this conversation takes us. One thing that really struck me is how this interview makes us rethink what progress really means. We tend to think, oh, new tech, that's good, but it might not be that simple.
That's interesting. Like, we get so caught up in the cool new gadgets and forget to think about the downsides, maybe?
Exactly. And this interview really makes us face those tough questions. Like, it talks about how even with all this technology, we're not actually getting happier.
Yeah, that's something I've thought about, too. We're always chasing the next thing, the next achievement, the next, I don't know, dopamine rush.
Yeah.
And it's never enough.
Yeah. And the interview says that maybe this need for more, this obsession with always doing more, might be what's stopping us from being truly happy. It says we need to focus less on achievements and more on finding peace and meaning right now.
So it's not about having more stuff. It's about changing how we see the world.
Exactly. And it gives some interesting ideas about how to do that, like having a balanced information diet.
Okay, now I'm curious. Tell me more about this information diet thing.
Well, it starts by realizing that we're just bombarded with information all the time. Our phones, our inboxes, social media, it's all fighting for our attention. And it can be really overwhelming.
Oh, tell me about it. I feel like my brain never shuts off. It's hard to just relax and be in the moment.
Yeah. And the interview says that this constant information overload isn't just bad for us mentally. It might even be stopping us from really thinking deeply, which is what we need for true happiness.
So what's the answer? Should we all just throw our phones away and go live in a cave?
Not necessarily. It's not about rejecting technology completely,
Right.
but about being more aware of how we use it, setting boundaries, making time for quiet.
Finding that balance.
Exactly. And one way to do that, the interview says, is to learn the art of boredom.
Boredom. I thought that was a bad thing.
Not always. The interview actually says boredom is important for creativity, for solving problems, for getting in touch with ourselves. It's when we're not distracted that our minds can wander and come up with new ideas.
Huh. That's a new way to look at it. I always thought boredom as something to avoid, but maybe those quiet moments are valuable.
Definitely. And it goes even further. It says maybe our inability to handle boredom is contributing to some of the big problems in the world, like political arguments and even the environmental crisis.
You're saying if we all learn to be a bit more bored, the world could be a better place.
That's the idea, slowing down, disconnecting, reconnecting with ourselves, with each other, with nature, making time for thinking and just being.
I see how this all connects. It's not just about AI or tech. It's about how we experience the world,
Yeah.
how we manage our attention, how we find meaning in a world that's always changing.
Exactly. And it's a challenge to think critically about the choices we're making, both personally and as a society, and ask ourselves, what future do we want? It's not about predicting the future, it's about making it.
That's powerful. And it sounds like the interview goes on to talk about some ways we can actually do that.
It does. It talks about war making a comeback and how we need to work together globally to face the challenges ahead.
Okay, let's get into that. What does the interview say about war and global cooperation?
Well, it starts by saying the world is a pretty unpredictable place right now. Like, the old rules don't work anymore. There's tension between countries
right.
because of things like economic inequality, political instability, and fighting over resources.
You can definitely feel that tension. It seems like we're always on the edge of some big conflict.
Right. And the interview says this trend is probably going to continue. It even mentions this crazy statistic. After years of military budgets going down, they're now going way up all over the world. It says we're entering a new era of war with cyber attacks, information warfare, and AI weapons.
That's kind of scary. So what can we do about it?
The interview says the only way to stop things from getting worse is to find ways to work together globally, like really commit to diplomacy, to international organizations, and to finding common ground even when we disagree.
So it's not about giving up our independence as nations. It's about realizing we're all connected and need to solve problems together.
Exactly. It says the problems we're facing, like climate change, pandemics, even the rise of AI, they're too big for any one country to solve alone. We need to collaborate, share knowledge, and combine resources if we want a future that works for everyone.
Makes sense. But it's hard to imagine how we get there, especially when the world feels so divided.
The interview knows it won't be easy. It says we need to change how we think, move away from this us versus them mindset that's so common in politics these days.
So instead of seeing everything as a competition, we need to think about how we all succeed together.
Right. The interview says we need to develop a sense of shared humanity. Realize that we're all in this together. Our fates are linked. It's about looking past our differences and seeing that we're all part of something bigger.
I like that idea. But it seems pretty idealistic. Can we really achieve that kind of global unity in the world today?
The interview doesn't pretend it's easy. It admits there will always be disagreements, different interests, even hostility, but it says we can't let those things control us. We need to build bridges, trust each other, find common ground.
So not ignoring our differences, but working together despite them.
Exactly. And one way to do that, it says, is to focus on what brings us together, not what divides us. Find shared values, goals, things we all want that are bigger than our differences.
Okay, now I'm starting to see some hope. It sounds like this interview is offering a way forward, a way to deal with these tough times and create a future that's more peaceful, fairer, and better for everyone.
It is. And it's a path that takes courage, compassion, and a willingness to see things in new ways.
That's a lot to think about. And we've only scratched the surface of this interview. I'm excited to see what else he has to say.
Me too.
Yeah.
Let's keep exploring.
Listening to all this, it's a lot to take in. All this talk about thinking critically and resisting manipulation. It's almost like, are we supposed to be superhuman or something?
That's interesting you say that because one of the things I really appreciate about this interview is how it doesn't just present these huge challenges. It actually gives some pretty down-to-earth advice on how to deal with them. It gets personal.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah.
Like real world stuff, not just theory.
Right. For example, remember how we talked about the information diet and boredom? Well, the interview actually talks about what this person does themselves to handle information overload and find some inner peace.
So they actually practice what they preach. That's not always the case.
Exactly. And it makes their ideas even more interesting. Like they talk about meditating every day and how it helps them stay focused with all the craziness of the world.
Meditation, yeah. Classic. I've tried it, but I'm not very good at it. My mind just won't slow down.
It takes time, for sure. But the interview says that even a few minutes can make a difference. And it doesn't have to be like formal meditation. It could be going for a walk, taking some deep breaths, just paying attention to your body, that kind of thing.
Okay, that makes it seem less intimidating.
Yeah.
Like little moments of calm throughout the day.
Exactly. And they also talk about taking longer breaks from everything, like going on silent retreats, no phone, no internet, no anything for weeks. It's how they process everything, reconnect with themselves, and get some clarity.
Wow, that's intense.
Oh,
I don't think I could do that. But I can see the value, especially these days when we're always connected.
it's about reclaiming your attention. The interview says our attention is valuable, and there are all these algorithms and advertisers trying to grab it constantly.
That's a good point. It's like we're in a fight for our own minds.
Right. And the interview is saying, fight back. Be more deliberate about what you focus on, what you let into your head.
So not ditching tech altogether, but being smarter about how we use it.
Exactly. And finding ways to stay calm and grounded in the middle of all this.
That's a good message. So to wrap up this deep dive, what's the one big takeaway you want people to remember?
I think it's that even with all this crazy technology changing the world so fast, we still have choices. We can choose how we use tech, how we see ourselves, how we contribute to, well, the story of humanity. We're not just predicting the future, we're creating it.
That's a great point. It's easy to get overwhelmed, but we really do have power. We can make choices, work together, and build a future we believe in.
The interview ends with a great question. What one thing will you focus on to make a difference in the world? And it reminds us that working together, we can accomplish so much more than we can alone.
That is a great question to think about. If you found this deep dive as fascinating as we did, definitely check out the full interview. It'll really get you thinking about the big questions facing us today. And maybe it'll even inspire you to find your own one thing to make the world a better place. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring, keep asking questions, and keep diving deep.